I, 29 Mem, thought my upstairs neighbor was just a clumsy jerk, until the ceiling caved in and everything changed. This happened 2 weeks ago. I still can't believe I'm typing it out. I live in one of those older 3-story apartment buildings where rent is cheap enough that you ignore the creaky floors and the fact that your upstairs neighbor sounds like they're training for the Olympics every night. My guy, let's call him Dave, was the worst. 11 p.m. Heavy thudding like he's rearranging furniture. 2 a.m. What sounded like bowling balls dropping. 6 a.m. Vacuuming. Who vacuums at 6 a.m.? I'm a remote software guy, so I work from home. After 3 months of this, I was running on 4 hours of sleep in pure spite. I left polite notes. I banged on the ceiling with a broom. I even slipped a passive-aggressive post-it under his door. Hey man, any chance we can keep it down after 10? Appreciate it. He responded by sliding a note back under my door. Sorry, working on something important won't happen again. It got worse. Last Tuesday, the thuds turned into scraping, like metal on wood, then a loud crack that made my light fixture swing. I was in a meeting when it happened and actually said, "What the fu-" out loud on camera. My boss asked if I was okay. I muted myself and stared at the ceiling like it was about to give birth. At 1:47 a.m., I finally snapped. I grabbed my flashlight, put on shoes, and marched upstairs. I was going to knock like a civilized person, but when I reached his door, it was already cracked open. Just an inch. A weird blue glow leaked out into the hallway. I should have minded my business. Instead, I pushed the door open a little more and whispered, "Dave, you good, man?" No answer. The scraping sound was louder now, coming from the bedroom. Against every survival instinct, I stepped inside. His living room looked normal except for about 50 Amazon boxes stacked against one wall. All sealed. The blue glow was coming from the bedroom. I crept closer, heart hammering. The door was open. I peeked in. Dave was on his knees in the middle of the room wearing a headlamp, prying up floorboards with a crowbar. Under the boards was dirt. Actual dirt and gravel, like he'd dug out a pit in the middle of his apartment. In the pit sat a metal box the size of a mini fridge, covered in warning stickers and what looked like government seals. A thick bundle of cables ran from the box up into his ceiling. My ceiling. He hadn't noticed me yet. He was muttering to himself. Just a little more and almost aligned. I took one step backward. The floorboard under my foot screamed. Dave's head snapped around. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he smiled this tired, relieved smile and said, "Oh, thank God. You're taller than me. I need you to hold the alignment rod steady while I calibrate." I ran. I sprinted down the stairs, slammed my door, and deadbolted it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely dial 911. I told the operator there was a crazy guy in my building digging up the floor and possibly building a bomb. They said they'd send someone. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the stairs, then knocking on my door. Not cops. Dave. "Listen, I know how this looks," he called through the door. "But I'm not a terrorist, I'm a geologist, well, amateur. The city won't let me dig a test hole outside because of permits, so I improvised. There's something under this building, something big." I told him through the door that I'd already called the police. He sighed. "Okay, fair, but before they get here, you need to see this." I don't know why I opened the door. Morbid curiosity, sleep deprivation, whatever it was, I followed him back upstairs. He showed me the box. It wasn't a bomb. It was a custom seismic monitoring rig he'd built over 6 months. Expensive as hell. The cables running into my ceiling? He'd snaked them through the shared ductwork to get a second reading point. The bowling balls were actually 50-pound calibration weights. The vacuuming at 6 a.m. was him cleaning dust from the equipment. And the thing under the building. He turned on a monitor. The screen showed jagged lines and numbers I didn't understand. "There's a previously unmapped fault line running right under us," he said. "Small but active. The building's foundation is garbage. One decent quake and this whole place pancakes. I've been trying to gather enough data to force the city to do something before it's too late." I laughed. I actually laughed because it was so insane. "You couldn't just email someone?" "I did. They called me a conspiracy nut. I have 3 degrees, by the way." At that exact moment, the police showed up. 2 officers. They looked at the hole in the floor, the fancy equipment, Dave's university ID, and my terrified face. Then they looked at each other. The older cop pinched the bridge of his nose. "Sir, you can't just excavate your apartment." Dave started explaining about shear waves and building codes. I backed away slowly. They didn't arrest him. They made him stop digging and said they'd report it to code enforcement. Dave looked defeated. I went back downstairs feeling like the world's biggest asshole. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., there was a polite knock on my door. Dave stood there with 2 coffees and a thick folder. "I get it," he said. I looked like a serial killer. "Truce?" We sat on my couch and he showed me everything. The data, the emails, the ignored responses from the city. Turns out my building was built in the 70s on the cheap, and nobody had ever done a proper seismic survey. His reading suggested we were sitting on a slow slip fault that could go at any time. Nothing movie dramatic, but enough to crack foundations and maybe bring down poorly maintained structures. I asked why he didn't just move. He looked embarrassed. "I can't afford it, and if I leave, who's going to watch this thing? I'm not a hero. I'm a guy who codes video game backends for a living." But that day I helped him write a better email. We attached his data, my photos of the hole, with his permission, and I added my own statement as a concerned tenant. We sent it to every local news station, the city council, and a couple geology departments at universities. 4 days later, a reporter showed up, then another, then a structural engineering team from the state. Yesterday, they red-tagged half the building. Everyone has to be out by the end of the month while they reinforce or possibly demolish. The city is furious at Dave for the illegal digging, but quietly relieved he caught it. Some tenants are mad at him. Most are thanking him, including me. I helped Dave move his ridiculous equipment into a storage unit yesterday. He's crashing on my couch until he finds a new place. Last night, while we were drinking cheap beer and watching the ceiling, which now has a literal hole in it from where his cables were, he looked over at me and said, "You know, if you hadn't come upstairs that night, I probably would have kept going until the floor collapsed on its own. So, thanks for thinking I was a murderer." I clinked my bottle against his. "Anytime, man." Moral of the story? Sometimes your annoying neighbor isn't a jerk. Sometimes he's a half-crazy, sleep-deprived hero trying to save your life with power tools and spite. We're both moving out in 3 weeks. I already told him if he finds another sketchy building, I'm blocking his number, but I'll probably help him dig anyway. DR. My upstairs neighbor was destroying the floor at all hours. I confronted him, thought he was building a bomb, called the cops, and accidentally helped expose that our entire apartment building was one good shake away from collapsing. We're all getting evicted, but we're probably not going to die. 1010 would broom bang ceiling again.